move quickly to the second session, and so I'm sure we've heard of Tranquility Homes, right? I think he's hiding at the back. Don't worry, he's around. So it's time to have Adam Bass speak to us regarding developing the right motivation. Oh, sorry, about real estate. So is this a real investment option or a tick box provision to owning a house? So we're just going to hear from him. Thank you so much, Adam.
Good afternoon, everyone. That was a bit close, wasn't it? Yeah, well, thank you, firstly, for inviting me along to talk to you. It's a great privilege, which I can thank Reg for thinking of me to come and talk at the event today. So hopefully I can add some value to your day and talk to you a bit about property and what I've been up to, and hopefully answer this question that I've been posed today with the idea of answering. When I first read the question today of what I've been asked to talk about, I kind of looked at it and thought, well, I've been a property guy for 18 years and I'm being asked to look at the other side of it. I mean, I've always seen it as a positive, but really it was an interesting thing going through the process of just taking a step back and thinking, okay, well, if you're just at the start of your property journey, what kind of things are you want to consider, and what are the cons that you would come across? So hopefully we can answer a few of those today for you. So the bits I want to go to for you today. So I'm going to do a bit about me, just to tell you who I am and what I do. Then I've got a section to talk about on property for a residential purpose. So some of you here might be homeowners, some of you might be thinking of getting onto the property ladder pretty soon, and hopefully we can I can guide you through some pros and cons of that with some people's help. And then secondly, just look at it from the other perspective, which is from an investment purpose, and then there'll be some time hopefully to answer some questions as well. I have been asked to speak for an hour, but I'm not sure my talk will go on for a full hour, I'll be honest. So yeah, just a little bit about me. So yeah, as I was saying, I've been in property for 18 years now. I started when I was 18. Didn't intend to go into property at all. I was doing all my A-levels with a view of becoming a vet, and I got to the A-levels and was doing chemistry, biology and maths, and it was just getting heavier and heavier and heavier, and I was like, looked back at my family, all of which have had successful business in one form or another, and thought, you know what, actually I ought to go out there and just start grafting and get stuck in, really. So I moved to Leicester in 2010, and I've lived here since. I've been here 14 years. I live in Anstey now. We recently just finished refurbishing a house that we've moved into, and I live there with my wife, and I've got 2 kids as well. So kind of my journey started, yeah, as I say, when I was 18. So I ended up, I was interested in property, but I didn't realise I really wanted it as a career. So I started working with my auntie, who had a letting agency in Northampton. And I think that's kind of one thing that I'd say to you guys kind of looking to start out. You don't necessarily need to go and get a career in it, but really try and absorb yourself into it and start thinking about just property as an idea and start learning about it. I think the more you can learn about it, the more confidence you're going to have when you start to talk about it. I think it was the same as what Alima said. I mean, I'd have really struggled before I knew anything about property to really try and stand up and start talking to people or convincing them why they should put their properties with me or do other things within property. But the more you kind of learn, and the more confidence you get, and that just exudes from you. So that's definitely the biggest tip. One of the biggest tips I'd say is, just get stuck in, start learning about it, be open to making mistakes, and just, it's the same with your day jobs really, and whatever your industries you're in. You have to think of it like that. You all started somewhere, and it's just getting started and making those first steps. So I worked in lettings for a number of years, and then I went into sales. So I wanted to go into sales just so I got a broad spectrum of both lettings and sales. Always knowing that I was going to go ultimately into setting up my own business and running it. I managed to buy a couple of buy-to-let properties along the way. I ended up not moving out of house and just bought some houses instead, just because I wanted to kind of build up that bit of passive income, which kind of served me well, because when I then did move out and buy a house, I rented out one of the rooms, and it kind of meant that I could live kind of a certain lifestyle, because I got the passive income that I'd started to build up. So then 7 years ago, the opportunity came across my desk to purchase an agency. I'd left working for the sales business I was working for the year previous, and actually set up a service departments business like Alima did. I ran that for about 3 years. We had about 35 properties. My wife ended up predominantly running it when I started running the agency. So then that's when we started scaling back on that front with it. So yeah, we've run the company now for 7 years. I've bought another couple of companies along the way, and we now manage probably about 400 or 500 single-let properties that we've rented out to families, and then we've got a portfolio of about 200 HMO rooms that we manage as well. So the lettings and property management team has grown to about 10 people now, and we've got 2 offices up at Foss Park, and then we've got one over in Hinckley as well. But I think for me, one of the nice things about property is it's so broad. You've got so many opportunities within it to do so many different things. And I look back at my career sometimes and think, well, maybe I kind of deviated a little bit because there's so many shiny pennies to go for, so to speak. But it has meant along the way I've managed to learn quite a few different strategies about different things. And over that time, I've kind of continued to build up my properties, and I've helped clients with various different projects that they've got on, and trying to broaden myself through networking as well. That's where I came across Reg. Probably I was just thinking about it, Reg. I think it's probably 8 years now. Must have been about 2016, I think. So been Kirby Muxlow, I think, at that property meet, wasn't it? So yeah, that's a little bit about me. Next slide, please. Yeah, so properties for residential purposes. So I wanted to kind of consider 3 things here. This is for a primary residence for investment. So a lot of people, you're renting a house and you're thinking you're having it to live in, and then you go to buy a house, but are you really thinking about it from the point of view that actually that could be a really good investment opportunity, or are you thinking about it from the point of view of, well, we're going to save some money with rent? So hopefully we can help answer that. And then I've just done a little one slide on kind of home ownership versus rentals, and just comparing some of the difference, because there is some benefits to renting, definitely against actually owning. So we'll have a little look at those, and then just some ideas and some tips around building equity in a property once you've... Yeah? Oh, yeah, cool. Thank you. Right, next slide, please. So, yeah, what I want to do first is I just want to kind of open it up to the audience. So, can you give me some ideas on what would be some positives of buying property or buying a house to live in? What would be the positives? Equity, yeah, that's a good one. Any other ideas? Yeah, there's that stability there, isn't there? For sure, that's definitely a benefit. Freedom from your landlord. Yeah, I haven't got that one honestly on my list, but stability again. Hopefully, they're not all ogres. I mean, you might be one day if you're not already. So, there was a hand over there. Credibility, yeah, definitely that helps in that respect, doesn't it? If you say you can own a house, it makes it sound that way. A home business, yeah. Yeah, definitely. If you want to work from home and yeah, there's some options there around doing that. That would be, yeah. Yeah, the appreciation over time, yeah, for sure. That's yeah, one of the major ones. So yeah, no, that's good, really good. So if we can go to the next slide now. Yeah, so these are the ones that I came up with, which I think we got most of them in the audience. So, I mean, there's long-term appreciation. The UK housing market's increased by nearly 250% since 2000. So the average house has rose from 75,000 in 2000 to 262,000 today. So there's definitely long-term appreciation there, just living in that house and, you know, living it in the same way you would live your lives, just owning that property. There's a real potential for appreciation there. Building equity, that was mentioned as well. So yeah, keep up with those monthly mortgage payments. You're reducing your loan over time, so that balance is coming down. And it's a good way of forcing savings as well. And I think a lot of people think of in their mortgage of it's in the head of having a mortgage and it being, you know, it's a cost, but it's also it's a forced way of saving because you're paying off some of that mortgage every single month. So it feels a lot easier to pay a mortgage than it does to try and put £200 or £300 into a savings account every month. So it's definitely advantageous for that reason. So one of the others that I had on my list was tax benefits. So you may or may not know, but if you buy a house, it appreciates in value. When you come to sell it, you're not paying any capital gains on that gain. So there's a definite value there to owning your own home and keep having that growth over time. Whereas it's a bit different with investment properties. You have to pay some tax on it when you come to sell them. Then stability and control, I think that was covered. You know, we talked about the landlords and the fact of no concerns over evictions. And then also the other one I put down here was leverage. So it gives you're in control of that asset for what is a relatively small down payment. I know your deposit seems quite hefty in a lot of cases, but if you compared it to a lot of other investments where you're buying something at 250, 300,000, it's a fairly small payment in comparison to what you're actually getting back over time. So there were the pros. So now let's look at the cons. So can anyone think of any cons of owning a property? Oh, they're all here already. So yeah, I mean, the cons I've got is obviously it's kind of a high entry cost against rentals. You've only got to find maybe £1,000, £2,000 for a rental property, whereas comparatively it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot more money for to buy. You've got ongoing expenses. You've got the mortgage interest, and you've got that kind of concern that the boiler might break down at any point, and you've got to find the money to repair that. Whereas that's kind of one of those things. As long as you've got a good landlord that's going to sort things out for you quickly, then you've got that stability there of thinking every month you've just got the rental payment, and that's all your house costs that you've got to pay. Another one is there's a lack of diversity there. So in most people's cases, the property is going to be the biggest investment that they're going to have. And if they think about it in regards to their overall wealth, it's kind of a very big chunk of it. And for me, that's one of the reasons, if you look at the way our system works, it probably takes 12, 16 weeks to buy a property, whereas if you went to other countries, I don't know what it's like in Africa, someone could probably tell me, but if you went to America, for instance, you could turn a property around and buy it within about 7 to 10 days. So, our system here is set up to kind of protect us from that a little bit. So if you have a sudden market change, as often has happened in the crisis in 2008, and there's other examples as well. In America, there was a massive fluctuation in the property values, so people lost hundreds of thousands in property value overnight. Whereas here, it's not like there was loss there, but it was a more gradual process because the actual transaction time that it took for a sale to go through, things had stabilised a little bit. So if you do stocks and shares and things, you'll know that the fluctuations are a lot more with that, and that's the same in property in other countries. So that's one there. So the other one other one we've got here is reduced flexibility. So if you go and buy a property in Leicester and then get a job opportunity in Scotland the next week, you've got a problem that you've got to deal with and work out how to cope with that. There's plenty of ways around it, but nonetheless, it's less flexible than if you've just got to give a month's notice and move out your rental property. So yeah, that's my cons from that point of view. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is just a little slide I did kind of with my ideas of kind of different factors against owning and renting. So you know, if you look at owning on the left-hand side, so your monthly costs, as we were saying, they're affected by interest rates if you're owning them, whereas you've got the potential rental increase if you're renting. Equity building, if you're owning, you haven't got that if you're renting. Some of these are actually quite interesting as well if you're thinking about going into property and doing things like rent-to-rents and that as well, because it's the same argument of one of the things you want to be thinking about when you go into rent-to-rents is have a clear strategy on how you're going to move from rent-to-rents into ownership, and kind of set money aside along the way or find a way to do that within it, just because really within property the rental side is good in some respects, but it serves the same purpose as what it does within the ownership or not. That it's a good way to get into property, but ultimately longer term you want to be trying to convert that into actual ownership. So market supply, there's higher market supply is increasing in sales. There's always more properties coming into the market for one reason or the other. Whereas rental demand, the market supply is low. You know, rent prices are continuing to rise, and that's just because there's landlords that are exiting the market for various different reasons, which we'll come on to. And then with the other one is obviously the price fluctuations from owning against having renting, which should always go up. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what I wanted to do was just kind of give you some ideas about building equity through ownership. So if you own your house or you're thinking of owning a house, what things should you be starting to think about really in regards to what to do with the property? So if you do own a property, always keep in touch with, track your property values. It's really important. Even if you're not thinking of selling, it's good to know what the market's doing and what's happening. So for instance here, I put an example that you know, Leicester in the last 20 years is the third highest in the UK for property price increase. And it does beg the question, if it's in the top 3 now, is that going to continue over the next 10 years, or should you look at other areas? There's some areas there like Reading, Blackpool or Worcester, all of which are, I say only, but only in comparison to the other have increased by 150% in 20 years. So there could be some opportunities there, depending on where you're looking. Make strategic mortgage payments. So most people would take out their mortgage and pay it once every single month. You can actually tweak that with your mortgage lenders, phone up and talk to them. But if you've got the capacity to split it to every 2 weeks, that means you're going to make 13 payments over those 12 months. So you can pay off that mortgage quicker and you can build up your equity quicker. And as we were saying, if that would probably work better as a saving mechanism in some people's cases than others. So investing in the value of and adding value as home improvements. So if you've got the house, try and focus on the high impact renovations. A lot of people, what I often find is that where people it's a fine line of making a house a home, but then going over the top. So if you've added value by putting things in like a new bathroom or new kitchens, things like that, I put energy efficiency down there as well, then they're probably things that when you come to sell the property are going to impact the price. So a new kitchen will give you a bit higher price, probably in the region of what it's cost you. I don't like to always promise that it's gonna double the value. So if you spend 10,000, it's going to add 20,000 to the house, an example. But I think one thing to be wary of is, you know, if you go for a really high-end kitchen, don't always expect things like that to come back immediately on the value. If you want like a bespoke kitchen that's kind of cost 20, 30,000 or whatever, then, you know, by all means, if you can live in that house for the next 10 to 15 years, do it. But if you're thinking of moving in the next couple of years, then it's probably something to consider, because you won't get that it's unlikely you'll get that value back immediately unless the whole house is done up to a really premium standard. And then the last one I put on there was refinancing strategically. So normally you'd have either a variable rate mortgage or a fixed rate. Every single time that comes close to an end, your mortgage company will be contacting you to offer you a new product, normally within their range. But kind of embrace that process. You'll find when you buy houses, it's very stressful going through that all the legal process with solicitors and with the mortgage lenders and sorting out the mortgage. And I think then after 2 years, the thought of having to go through that again because you're at the end of a fixed term, you just want to take the product switch and then you're on your way. But actually embracing in that process and going, okay, well, you know, yes, it was a pain, but if I had to go through it again now and it saved me £100 a month because there's another bank that's going to be better, then, you know, that might make sense. And it could also be an opportunity to raise a little bit of equity out of your house or lower the amounts on your mortgage, and all sorts. So again, that kind of links in with the first one, and keep track with your house price. And then when it comes to those end of those products, kind of consider which way you want to go with them. So yeah, have anyone got any questions on that section before I move on to the next one? Yes. Yeah. So you own, let's say you own a house and you're thinking of refinancing it. You mean, yeah. So I'm talking about that in the context of, let's say you bought it 2 or 5 years ago for 100,000. When you come to refinance it, it's worth 120,000, let's say. So you've then got an option to decide which way you want to go with it. You could have a product switch which will keep you kind of pretty similar, or you could go, well, you know, I borrowed 75% against the 100,000. I can now borrow 75% against the 120 and get some money back out that way, which you could then use to either do some of those other things like reinvest back into the property, or potentially raise some money to do some other investments in property or in different areas. So yeah, there was another question there. Yeah.
Yes, is it every bank that offers it? And if your mortgage provider doesn't offer that, what can you do?
I definitely would, firstly, I'd say speak to your mortgage advisor about it, because I'm not a mortgage advisor myself. But I think nearly every mortgage product will offer a repayment process, as in, like, it'll normally allow you to make overpayments by, I think, normally about 10%. I think that's pretty standard across most mortgage products. So even it might not necessarily be tweaking that, you could make the overpayments in that kind of way. Any others? There'll be more time for questions at the end. I just thought I'd ask on that section before I moved on. Yeah, so my next section then is on property for investment purposes. So again, I want to look at the pros and cons of investments, and then just look at some investment strategies that are kind of out there within property. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, let's go through some then. If anyone, yeah, that's okay this time. That's all right, thank you. Can anyone think of some pros about benefits of buying a buy-to-let property? Extra income, yeah. Yeah. Any others? I've got 6, by the way, so. Yeah, increase over time, yeah. Liquidity, yep. What, sorry? Leverage, yeah. You're remembering it from the last one. Yeah, let's go on to the next slide then, please. So yeah, with this one, in some cases it's fairly similar to the last. I mean, one thing I would say, if you are considering going and starting to build a property and you've got the finance there to do it, set out with it thinking of it like a business. don't think of it like you want to generate £200 or £300 extra. Think of it like a second business. The sooner you get into that mindset of doing that, the better. I think there's a lot of landlords that we'll deal with that have been either accidental landlords or they've just got 1 or 2 properties, and they're far more emotionally attached to the properties than they really should be, for one reason or another, whether it's, small amounts of damages, not necessarily setting money aside because things might break further down the line, those kind of things. So you've really got to think, if I'm going to go into property, you may or may not want to set up a limited company to do it, but then once you are in it, start kind of thinking of it like a business, setting money aside for eventuality, things that could happen, emergency funds, those kind of things, more so than what some people do, where they get the extra £300 or £400 a month income and then start spending it, and then they become dependent on it. So kind of use it as a certain mechanism to do something, but don't become too dependent on it. So yeah, on my list then, long-term appreciation. We said that. We spoke about how they've increased. The steady cash flow, the capital appreciation. A lot of properties in the UK, how a lot of my landlords have grown their portfolios bigger quite quickly is because of that appreciation over the last 15, 20 years. So what they've done is they've done that process that we spoke about recycling the money. Once they've got it in there, they've waited for it to appreciate in value, pulled some money back out, bought another one, and that's allowed them to continue on that journey. I put down tax advantages. You can offset things like maintenance costs, and some, if you've got a limited company, then you can offset your mortgage interest payment against it as well, although you can't do that in your own name. I put down inflation hedge. So the real estate often matches or exceeds different industries and different areas, so it's normally quite protected and quite sheltered from too many market changes and that inflation that we go through. And then the leverage opportunities as regards to mortgages and expanding your portfolio. Now there's some cons. Next page, please. So yeah, cons-wise, obviously it's a high entry cost and a high exit cost. So, for a typical buy-to-let, you're probably going to have 25% to put down. So there's quite a large down payment there, and then you've got the transaction costs, stamp duty, legal costs. The governments are making it more and more onerous on us to pay lots more fees and things down the line. Also, when it comes to disposing of it, we've got the capital gains that we mentioned. There's a degree of market risk that the property could drop or rise in value, leaving you in a position of negative equity. It's not as common now. You still do see it, but it's just not as common as it has been in the past. The ongoing management responsibilities, the tenant management as well, if you're not using an agency. There's, single lets are a lot less onerous than service apartments, for instance, which are right at the high end of kind of amount of work you've got to do, but there's still the responsibility there of looking after it and maintaining it, and dropping everything when the tenant rings you at whatever time and wants things sorted immediately. And then the main one for me, which is really impacting a lot of our landlords at the moment, is the regulatory environment. There's a lot of changes going on within the industry at the moment that are really making landlords second guess whether they want to continue investing into property. For me, I look at that as it's an opportunity for me. I look at it and I think, well, I'm an agency that kind of prides itself on knowing how things work and want to try and deliver the best we can for the landlords. Well, this is more of an argument why they would come to me and try and get that than go out there and try and do it themselves, especially with some of the changes around renters reform that's going on at the moment. That's going to reshape a lot of how we look and do rentals. And I think owning a rental property management company, a landlord having a property and managing it themselves, and with all that regulatory risk, they're more likely to come to a management company now than they would have been in the past. And in some respects, I'd like to see it regulated a bit more. Like, you know, anyone can go and set up a letting agency tomorrow, which to me feels a bit backwards. That's something that people can go and do. Whereas in a lot of other industries, you've got to have a lot of career experience and get relative exams and things done. So yeah, that's some cons. Now my last slide, please. So I just want to list a few investment strategies. Obviously, we've spoken about some earlier, which were the kind of the lower price point entry in regards to finding some. But we've got buy-to-lets. That's obviously your very vanilla ones. They're the ones that I'd encourage you to get into as soon as you can, purely because they're not sexy and they don't make you a lot of money, but they're very stable and they're very reliable. And yeah, a lot of my landlords that got into that early and have just had that that's been their only revenue stream. They've not kind of deviated from that, are really reaping the rewards, like, because they're paying off the mortgages gradually over the years, and as now they're reaching retirement, they've got X amount of properties all without mortgages, and they've got that passive income that can take them through retirement. So they're more, I look at that, the buy-to-lets are right on the low end of risk from that point of view. Some different areas, we do a lot of HMOs, so we do take you through the whole process of sourcing the HMOs, developing them, and then helping refinance them as well. So that's pretty good. You get high return for that. If you're looking to try and if you've got the cash to get into it, you need a lot more if you want to go through that whole process. But you can quickly generate a lot more money to take you away from a day job if that's what you're trying to do, doing it that way. And then some other areas there, I put build to rent becoming very popular, and I think it will do more so. There's been examples just today when we're talking about the service apartment industry and the benefit of having a whole block of one thing doing the same thing as opposed to things being dotted around. And as large institutions get into the industry, I mean, Lloyds Bank, for instance, they want to be the biggest homeowner in the UK by 2030, maybe, might even be sooner than that. So they've got a divestment strategy there to be buying a lot of properties. So getting into build to rent might be a good way of having a good exit to kind of a big company at the end of it. And then buy to flip as well. The difficulty with buy to flip for me is actually finding the properties. If you can find the properties that have got that much below market value in order to be able to refurbish and make some money off of them, then you could normally just flip them and make nearly as much. So just putting them back in an auction and doing it. It's not always the case, but that can often be one route. But that's one of the exciting things for me about property, is that you kind of always got loads of different options. If you've got a property or get control of a property even, you've probably got an armory of about 5 or 6 different things that you can probably do with it in order to get it to generate some money for you. So that's, yeah. So any questions? That's the end of my talk. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have a question. So the buy to flip. So yeah. If I'm buying it off with a mortgage, and with the intention to maybe fix up the property and sell.
Yeah.
So how do I clear off the mortgage? Is it possible to clear off the mortgage? Because some lenders would, since it's a contract, it's not possible to clear off the mortgage. So how is that possible?
When you come to sell it, you mean?
Yeah.
There's different ways of doing it, and it's kind of looking at your numbers when you first go into the project. You could look at a product that has got a 2-year fixed, for instance. You might sell it after 6 months, and you've just got to pay the release fees. If you factor those release fees into your mortgage payments from the start, into your figures from the start, then you're kind of covering yourself from that. So there's options around it. It's just you've got to look at where you want to get to and how you want to get there right from the outset when you're doing your numbers. So that would probably be one way of doing it. All right. Where am I?
Adam, thank you for your presentation. Very insightful. Like I say, I'm back again. The dummy. Commercial properties.
Yes. Yeah.
You didn't show more light on that one. And I know, I spoke with someone some time back, and they did say there are quite a lot of incentives if you invest in commercial properties. I don't know if that's true, but since that's your forte, you might be able to expatiate on that a lot.
Yeah. So there's different. Are you thinking about it from a buying perspective? Yeah.
Yes. So if you walk around town center, different towns, you see some shops, and they just tell you it's for sale. So someone did say sometime walk past the shop into property, we could rent it out. Then there's an incentive that comes back from government or something. I didn't really wrap my head around
refurbishing
it.
Yeah.
Then two questions came to mind, and maybe because I'm a dummy and I'm kind of like shy asking anybody any question on certain things, is when you see like a full building partitioned into several offices, and you see for sale. Top of my head, I know it is not the entire building being sold. It's just that portion. Am I right? It's just that portion being sold. So how will my investment in just that portion, I'm losing my trail now. How will my investment in just that portion give me the set value I want and the incentive that's meant to come back to me? Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so. So I'm thinking you mean the incentive like a grant or something in order to refurbish it or do something else with it. I think it just comes down to the numbers and kind of looking at them from the outset and working out how they can work. I mean, I think the reason I didn't touch too much on commercial property here is that for me, commercial is probably 2 or 3 steps down the path, definitely from a purchase point of view, because you're going to start looking at planning and elements like that, and money to enter it goes up as well. There's definitely some interesting concepts around there around renting them and refurbishing them though. And again, you've just got to get some good advice from the outset. If you're looking at something, make sure that you're considering kind of, if you're trying to do something with it that might sound logical to do your own home, for instance, you might need planning to do that within a commercial space. So there's things like that to consider. The amount of money you've got to put down in order to take the places is higher as well. And things like the business rates are exceptionally higher in that space than they are in a normal residential space. So there's just different considerations you've got to start thinking about. But it'd be an interesting one to go down because there's not that many people, I don't think, that are doing looking at commercial from a rental perspective. So it might be something to learn upon, and that could be your niche into property.
Okay, then one more stupid question. If you meant to buy a property, like I own a company right now, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm a director. But I want to do the buy to rent or buy, renovate and flip kind of business. I know fundamentally, being an immigrant, I need to have a good credit rating to be able to get any form of mortgage, right? Mm. For the company, now, if I want to buy through a company, what's the procedure? Are you looking at the company or are you looking at the individual? Is there any difference between the person buying the company or the person buying the property or the company buying the property, or the director is a reflection of the company, so it still boils down to me? There's no...
It depends what you're buying it for. So I know you said if you're thinking of it from a buy-to-let perspective, then I'd probably be thinking of setting up another company to buy that through. A lot of mortgage lenders would look at a new limited company now, and that they'd be okay with that. But the purpose of that company is to buy and hold property. Whereas if you've got a business, then whatever your business is, it's to do that purpose. So if they're considering you buying a property within that business, then they're probably going to be looking at it from the business's perspective and what's the point of it for the business, rather than for anything else, if you see what I mean.
My question surrounds the first-time buyer allowance and how well to probably use it. It's kind of like trickles down a bit. To start with, I would say for a first-time buyer who is trying to probably invest in a property with someone who has already bought a property before, would they still be considered for the first-time buyer allowance, say 5%, due to that merger that is happening?
Are you talking about it from a stamp duty perspective or from a mortgage perspective?
I mean, from the mortgage and the deposit required point of view.
I think that would depend on lender to lender, so you'd be best to speak to a mortgage advisor to clarify that, but I'd be surprised if most of those will be products for first-time buyers, so if they've already got another property, then they won't qualify for it. I would have thought, but...
just one more. The second question would be, as a first-time buyer or somebody who hasn't bought a property before, would it be wise to rather go the investment route or buy a personal home use? Because now, this is the analogy. If you're a first-time buyer who's buying for personal reasons, you can probably buy with 5% deposit or thereabouts. But if you're now buying for investment purpose, the deposit is going to be higher. So would you say it's, what would your opinion be in terms of that, to buy for investment and lose out on the first-time buyer allowance, or what would you rather advise?
It depends a lot on your own personal circumstances, to be fair. I mean, I think for me, in that position, I'd probably, it depends what if you're living at home and you want to move out of home, or it depends what you want to do, really. I mean, what I would probably say is if you are buying it and you're going to buy it to live in and it's just going to be for yourself, then, you know, you could always go down the route of renting out, trying to get enough so you can buy a 2-bed and renting out one of the rooms. And then you're actually covering that mortgage and having a house that you're living in for next to nothing. So with property, you can always start thinking about stuff like that. You could also look at it and go, okay, well, why don't I buy a more run-down property? You know, if you're handy or think you've got enough friends and contacts to refurbish a property quite cheaply, then that could be another route. You could buy a property, stay living at home, gradually live there, but refurbish it a little bit, and then look to resell it afterwards and buy something more suitable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, we'll be talking about buying through a limited company, or
No, personal.
No.
Question. Yeah. From the stamp duty perspective, if you are buying for the first time, but you are buying for the purpose of investment, are you still subject to pay the stamp duty, or will you still be exempted if you are buying a first-time buyer?
I'm not certain, to be honest. There's only a couple of mortgage products out there that if you're not a homeowner, that you'll be able to get anyway. I think there's only 1 or 2 lenders that would do it.
It's buying outrightly, outright purchase without
oh, right.
mortgage.
I mean, I would have thought if it's your only home, then you should be fine with that, yeah. Because it's only the mortgage element's probably where it kicks in more than anything, if you were looking at that. But no, if you've not got a house at the moment and you've never bought a house, whether you're buying with cash or with mortgage, then you shouldn't pay any stamp duty on it.
Hello. Thank you, Adams. The question I want to ask is actually concerning the issue of HMO. What is the possibility of using rent-to-rent, for HMO? And if it's possible, what are the likely challenges in terms of maybe legislation and all that that you need to consider?
Yeah, 100%. So a lot of people, we've mainly talked today about rent-to-rent from a service department perspective, but a lot of, there's a strategy out there where you can use it for a HMO perspective as well. So you'd be just looking for a different property. So you'd be looking for probably a rundown student property that was rented out as 4 or 5 bedrooms that you could add value to fairly cheaply, and then rent out the rooms for longer term to kind of there'll be some processes and things that would be involved. Yes, yeah, but it's definitely a strategy that a lot of people that's probably in many respects is more popular than service apartments.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Can I ask my question? So I want to ask a question. You have your own estate agent.
Yeah.
So what would be a good deal for you if an investor approached you to say, would you have houses that I can, you can contract to me? What sort of thing will appeal to you?
So what do you want to, what are you pitching? What are you selling me?
No, I'm just, because Alima mentioned that a lot of agency tends to turn down an offer. So I'm thinking, well, if I want to, I have my own limited company and I'm looking for landlords, and I know you have some landlords under your belts, or you probably have some houses. Generally, what would you be looking for to say, actually, this may be a good deal, let's have a conversation?
Yeah, so from a rent-to-rent perspective.
Yes, yeah? Rent-to-rent.
So I think the difficulty is, for me as an agent, that a majority of a landlord comes to me to rent out their house. Because we do 2 or 3 different strategies, we've normally gone through 2 or 3 different options with them as regards to which way they would want to do it. So, I would have talked to them about HMOs and being able to refurbish it and do it as a HMO. I'll have talked to them about renting it out as a single let and what that might look like. So for us as an agent, when rent-to-renters come to us, that's why it's often difficult from that element for us to work with them. But the other elements of it, which, you've just got to build up over time, and you'll do that by networking, is to just build that trust. At the end of the day, if I've got 10 properties for rent-to-renters, why do I need to go to 10 people? I'd rather go to one that I know well and I trust to say to my landlord, well, this person's credible and we've used them before and I know they do things right. So that's the difficulty, really. And that, for me, it's gaining that experience, which you might only get by kind of not getting it right a few times over, until you get to that point where you've got enough credibility there from your knowledge and understanding that someone's ready to take a chance on you. But that's it for us. I've got one person who, on the rare occasion we have for rent-to-rents, I'd normally go to, and we don't do much in the service department anyway, normally because of around mortgages and stuff like that more than anything else, and it's giving them the correct advice around that from a landlord perspective. So.
All right. We're thinking
we're doing a panel, aren't we? Yeah.
Okay, let's go quickly. Just 2 more.
Well, are we doing a panel talk next anyway?
Yeah. So I'm just thinking we could meet with you.
Get Helena back up to answer the questions.
Yeah, and then we'll talk about it because of our time.
Yeah.
That's 4 questions. Let's talk after because of our. We're looking at ending this session in the next 30, 45 minutes max. But if we continue with these questions, I'm not sure if we'll be able to do that. Barrister, okay? He's still raising his hands. Okay, please ask your question.
I just want to ask, why do people prefer to buy a house rather than buy a landed property and then build it yourself?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think
it's cheaper.
It's probably the barrier to entry again, because I think in the UK, and it's the barrier to entry and it's the experience. The experience you need to go and buy a buy-to-let, and the people out there that were going to help you build to get a buy-to-let and manage it for you. There's loads of loads of opportunities there for you. There's loads of people to help you with it. I'm not saying there's not anybody there to help find some land and help develop it, but there's a lot more pitfalls there. There's a lot more things that can go wrong. So I wouldn't discourage you from doing it, but I wouldn't. It would be quite brave to go that as a first route, and you're going to need a fair amount of money in order to put down in order to get the development finance. Then you'd need to go down that route, and development finance tends to be a lot more expensive than the normal residential finance. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely great from that point of view that you do get to design it and you can build it exactly how you do it, and that's a positive for it. I think I just look at it from the negatives perspective for people at an entry level, that there's so many more pitfalls there that could go wrong. I mean, just planning as an example. I've been through a planning process at the moment, and it should have taken 6 months and it took 20 months. And that time destroyed the deal. So, you know, I ended up selling it when I was originally going to develop it. So there's a lot of those things that you kind of learn as you go along that kind of really hamper you. So it's...
Can you meet with her? She's sitting beside Reg.
Yeah. Bring land, yeah. It can be, but you're often paying more for it as well, and that's one thing you've got to think of. If you're buying a piece of land that's got nothing on it, versus even if it's just got a warehouse on it or something fairly minimal, you're paying more for that, the fact that there's something there. So you're actually paying more for the land, which is what it boils down to. If you're going to knock it down, it's the land value at the end. So.
All right, thank you very much, Adams. Thank you. I think we can do better. Please clap for him.
Thank you for listening to this sermon from Envoy Nation. We hope that you were blessed by the message. Stay connected with us on all social media platforms by following at The Envoy Nation, and visit our website at www.theenvoynation.org for more information, resources, and updates. May you continue to walk in faith and be richly blessed. Until next time, take care and God bless.